Well, that ceasefire deal between Israel and Lebanon taking up much ink in the international papers. We're going to take a look at that now with Leo McGuinn. Leo, going to start with the Lebanese papers, I believe.
I'll start with L'Orient Le Jour, which is actually a French language daily. In fact, it's the biggest non-Arabic newspaper in Lebanon. Their headline reads, "A ceasefire under fire." You can see the image of Beirut billowing in smoke after Israeli strikes. The ceasefire came into effect just a few hours ago after nearly 2 months of intense fighting, as we know. Looking inside the paper this morning, they have this editorial piece with the headline, "The Ashes to be Recycled," talking about the aftermath of this and the need to now take stock. The writer accuses Israel of engaging in a sinister ritual of hysterical outburst of violence as a prelude to the ceasefire. And there's this line on Joe Biden: "Unable to keep the Israeli fury against Gaza under control, at least Washington made itself heard on Lebanon." Joe Biden can therefore pride himself on ending his faltering career with at least one diplomatic success. This is Al Akbar, which is a paper with close ties to Hezbollah. They proclaim victory on their front page this morning while assuring that its troops remain unshakable. The newspaper presents the agreement reached with Israel as a copy of the one that ended the 2006 war.
OK, so that's how Lebanese papers are seeing it. What about across in Israel?
Well, this is the Jerusalem Post. They have a fairly straightforward headline on their front page this morning, referencing the fact that the deal passed through the cabinet 10-1. It's been broadly supported in the government. But one man who has come out against it is former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, calling the deal a total security diplomatic failure. The paper are also fairly pessimistic about the deal. They claim that the very terms of this ceasefire show that a threat of a new war in Lebanon remains real and, according to them, very close. Well, let's move to Haaretz, which is a left-leaning newspaper, a paper that was actually boycotted by Netanyahu and his government just a few days ago. They have a headline, "Biden calls to end war in Gaza too," and they have this editorial piece this morning. You can see there, Israel's highest moral imperative is to stop the war in Gaza too. An agreement in the north must not come in exchange for continued fighting in the south, they say. They say that the government must look at ending fighting as an important step on the way to ending the fighting on all fronts, which of course includes Gaza. They must take advantage of Hamas's loss of Hezbollah's active support and move to a ceasefire agreement and hostage deal, which will save the lives of the hostages who have survived the ordeal. The piece finishes by saying that this is the state of Israel's highest moral imperative and the time to act is now.
A lot of reactions, Leo, from world leaders indeed is to hope that this ceasefire will lead to a peace in the wider region. How is it being picked up in the international papers?
Yeah, unsurprisingly, this doesn't just make the front pages in the Middle East, it's all over the world, whether it be The Guardian in the UK or La Repubblica in Italy. And of course, it's being widely covered in the US. This is a Washington Post opinion piece this morning with the headline, "In a season of war, diplomacy finally gets a win." They say that the ceasefire offers hope for a resolution of conflict in the region as a whole. Biden said his administration is still hopeful of a deal in Gaza. According to this, Netanyahu's big problem in Gaza is that he lacks a clear plan for the day after the fighting stops. Gaza is a mess, and re-establishing order there will take many months of patience on both sides. We'll go to one of the US's other biggest papers. This is the New York Times. They pose a similar question. What does the ceasefire mean for Gaza? They say that for now, Netanyahu seems willing to let the suffering continue indefinitely for Gazans and Israeli hostages alike, which makes it difficult or even impossible to negotiate at the moment. In the UK, the Financial Times have a similar message this morning. They say this might not be the end. The ceasefire is probably a fragile piece, a band-aid that could come off at any moment. But what about Hamas? What's been their reaction to this ceasefire? Well, Italian daily La Repubblica have this interview this morning with Bassem Naim. He's the head of international relations for Hamas. He says that if the Lebanese people have decided that this is in their best interest to come to an agreement with Israel, then that's fine with them. He says the group doesn't field betrayed in any way by Hezbollah because, as he puts it, our goal was not for Netanyahu to destroy Lebanon.
OK, Leo McGuinn there with a look at the international papers. Thanks very much indeed.